I think they might be. Yeah, we
And do you feel that they've included you in these decisions, in the decisions that are specific to your case?
I remember those days. The first good night sleep. Actually, I think the flip side was as soon as we woke up.
April.
Yeah, what's wrong?
My daughter's in fourth.
We'll be starting in just a few moments, y'all. Waiting on April.
That's all.
Giving everybody time. I'm April. Hi. And it's perfect. We actually have a home inspector as our presenter today, and he brought some amazing city barbecue. So for those that keep coming on Zoom, y'all are really missing some great food here. I was like, we have so much Panera and Bojangles and Chick-fil-A, and he's like, well, I'm bringing city barbecue. So he's
Yeah,
the man.
we're gonna make him the permanent. If he's bringing city barbecue, he'll be the permanent sponsor.
Yes. And I'm glad there's some newer agents in here because some of this stuff may be a little boilerplate for some experienced agents. But again, we're in a new season now of due diligence and negotiations. We can all talk about how the market's been, but you know, it's kind of like the answer was just no. My name is no. Its answer is no, no matter what you ask. So now we are back to contingencies and, you know, repair negotiations and all those things. So it's exciting times, and personally, I'm here for it. That's how it was when I got started. So, and I know for several others in the room, but I'm going to go ahead and ask Jeremy to come up first. He is a home inspector. And so we're just going to kind of have some conversation. I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about him, but then we're going to talk about why inspections are the way they are and how to explain them to your buyers. So welcome to the stage, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hey guys, I'm Jeremy Simpson, local customer service driven home inspector from JB Simpson Home Inspection. So live right here in the area. I've got kids at West Johnson. I went to Garner and North Garner Middle School. So we're local, live right across from Stevens's Barbecue. We've been out here for a really long time. As far as a home inspection company, I'm going to try to be brief because I will sit up here and talk as long as they let me. So we'll kind of go through, and I know it's a perfect day today because you're going to hear a lot of this kind of stuff, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some questions as we go. But I want to talk about some of the things that separate our inspection companies from some of the inspectors who you guys have seen or comes through. So we'll kind of skip over the stuff that we all do, right? Most of us now have websites that you can schedule on. Most of us try to be very convenient as far as that kind of stuff goes. When we started the home inspection company, when we decided to go that route, part of the reason we started the inspection company is because we felt like the industry had a ton of knowledge. There was a lot of great inspectors out there as far as with the knowledge level, but definitely lacked the customer service and the communication side, right? True. So one of the things that we heard a lot when we first started is you would hear experienced agents talking about, you know, be a buffer for the home inspector, you know, create that buffer area. And we immediately set to kind of dispatch that. So most of my agents will ask Jeremy, let's call Jeremy, let's text Jeremy. That's the relationship that we want. We want you to send your buyers to us, you know, have those three-way phone conversations so I can make you confident instead of nervous. So everything that we do in our company, we understand that the buyers are our client. Our number one job is to protect them, protect their assets, let them know what we have going on. But we understand a very important piece of our business is that agents are our referral partners, right? And we, in a way, represent you if you refer us or give our name out along with a couple others. So we want to make sure that we make your life as convenient as possible. So some of the ways we do that is we do use the new web-based software. So you're kind of looking at a website, you can click, point, zoom, instead of having to read through a 60-page PDF file, which we can convert to a PDF. That's no big deal if you need to send it to somebody. The other thing we do is we focus on kind of like that one-stop shop mentality, but all my stuff's local. So let's say you need a septic inspector. You can go online on my website, you can schedule an inspection, and you literally can click, I need termite, I need well, I need septic, I need so and so.
Woohoo.
And anybody I send out, they're all local guys that I know, have known, that I've vetted, have done great work, and we'll get those price points. And most of those are fixed. Septic changes from time to time, and well changes from time to time, just because the situation is completely different. But termite is flat rated. We have a comprehensive HVAC inspection where they'll come through, put gauges on it, leak check, the whole process, and they'll write you a full report. So
Do you schedule them to be out at the same time as you?
nailed it, exactly. So when we schedule it, we do have showing time access, and we schedule them to be right in our time frame. But we're fortunate enough that we have great relationships with those guys, so they do flat rate us. So with the HVAC, it doesn't matter if you have 6 systems, 1 system, if it's a 40s build or a 2018 build, you know, you can tell your clients it's this much money, and it's the same every single time. And then they give you a full HVAC report. It's not just like, hey, we found this leak, here's your estimate. They give you estimates so you can negotiate, but they go through its full pictures and colors and detail, because one of the things that we talk to them about is presenting themselves like we present ourselves, right? We want a nice branded quality product. Our HVAC company does the exact same thing. So that's one of the things that we focus on, kind of that one-stop shop for you. And I tell every agent I've ever met, we understand that you might already have a relationship with somebody else. We're happy for that person. We always tell you 2 things. One, inevitably, you might run across some clients that are a little more challenging than you have in the past, or a house that you know is going to be tiny little nasty crawl space, 1940s build, and you have to look at your inspector at church on Sunday, or you have to look at them next week. Call us for those. But you know what I mean? The ones that you're like, oh man, I don't want to have James come out. Well, we're happy to do those for you, and set that kind of expectation with the clients. And really, that's what I pride myself on more than anything else, is having that client really be satisfied and happy with you and me and that whole presentation. And the other thing I tell everybody is don't hesitate to call me, email me, text me, even if you're on the seller side and a report comes through and you're kind of curious of what a home inspector meant, or you get a report and you just need some explanation, or you have a great home inspector, but he doesn't have the relationships I have with the septic and the HVAC and things like that, and you're scrambling to go, I need a septic inspection, nobody's available. I'm local, these guys know me, we've got great relationships. You'd be amazed how many times I can call them and say, hey, you know, I need you here on Tuesday. I'm actually not doing it, it's for another agent, but I need a favor. You know, they don't want to be in a bind, go take care of them for me. And we can definitely take care of that.
What would you say is your average turn time? So luckily things have calmed down just a little bit, and we're not like, oh my gosh, I only have 10 days of due diligence right now. You know, we have a little time again. But what would you say if I went online scheduled, I need your lead time would be?
So we average within the week. We never let it get a week and a half. So even in peak, I do everything I can to quantify marketing and things like that to not get a week and a half out.
Okay.
So I've got me and one other inspector. His name's James, fantastic inspector. So we do have some extra coverage there. But usually you can get me within the week, maybe the next. But usually I have an openings for James same week.
Okay.
Mhm.
Tell us a little bit about what your inspection reports look like, because that's one of the things I'm going to talk about, because
Yeah.
everybody's are different. I know you'll have to use a similar template, for lack of a better word, but tell us a little bit about kind of what to expect from your reports.
Yeah, so all my stuff is web-based. So if you look at an older inspection report, and most guys are going web-based, if you look at an older inspection report, it'll be these big, long, massive paragraphs, 40-page files kind of stuff. So all my stuff's web-based. So what that means is you'll get a summary, there'll be a picture of the item there, there'll be a kind of a short description, and you'll be able to actually click on that picture, zoom it in, the whole 9. So as far as the web-based part, you can pull it right up on your phone. It is super streamlined, so you can get through it really, really quick. And then we do use Vectora now. One of the advantages of Vectora is it's a full template that I can change. So when we have market trends start to happen, or we have new stuff passed by our North Carolina licensing board, I can implement that stuff very quickly and maybe use a little bit better verbiage or more comfortable verbiage than some other inspectors who use home gauge or something like that, where it's fixed. Right. So that's one of the things. And we do have a lot of the advantages on the Spectora too. Is we do have a repair request builder where you can go through and highlight those items and say, hey, I'm going to make my own repair request. seller, please fix this. Or the one thing I love about Spectora is you can say, I want it repaired or I want some money. And it builds it for you. And you can just drag and drop the comments. You click the comment, it puts the picture and comment and everything right there for you.
For y'all that are new, that is gold right there. And y'all had any idea how many times we have printed off 85 pages and went through and highlighted before we sent it to our client and said, this is what I think we need to be worried about. And I'll talk about this a little bit more too. This is standard, that we see this all the time. And we're going to talk about some things that we see all the time, but that is gold, being able to build that repair request list, because that's one of the most time consuming things we do. And I love the concession versus saying, and we'll talk about the difference in asking for a repair versus concessions too.
Yeah, that was a big thing for us. Other than that, the report we kind of break down, it is kind of color coded. So you'll have blue and then you'll have orange and red, right? So blue is like maintenance and minor stuff, door stops and all those little things that are important to us because we want to give your buyer as much information as possible. But they're really minor. You can almost kind of look at them and say, oh, the home inspector is telling you to monitor this. Right. So we color code that on purpose. So it gives you an opportunity to say, no, he's not so worried about this, or this is typical maintenance, kind of stuff. And then orange is everything in the middle. 99% of what we write up, right? Things that don't quite function correctly, or if we see something that might potentially have a problem if we don't get ahead of it. And then red would be the safety concerns and major concerns, growth in the crawl, basically anything electric, other than like loose outlets and simple stuff, the state makes us write as safety concerns. Other than that, some of the really cool things on our report that we do is we have an informational tab in each tab that you don't have to click. So if you're just looking at it, it's not on your screen, but you can choose to click. And we put full pictures, model, serial numbers, manufacturer dates of all your HVAC systems, hot water heaters, appliances, all that stuff. So, and that literally is just extra information for your clients. I feel like I could.
And links to the manuals of how to use them.
We can't do it. We can't do it yet on the new software. We used to. We're working on it. We're working on it. That's a code thing, and their Spectora is really cool. They have a whole team, but they have to write a full separate code just for me to be able to include links to the owner's manual on the page. It will be here as soon as they finish it. On the old software, that was something that I could implement. We will have it eventually, so it'll be links to the owner's manual. We can pull your owner's manual on any appliance you ever want at any time, and I'll send it right to you, and we can find a way to get it in there. That's really, really simple for me. And I do have that background. Two other things I want to touch on really quick when we talk about making your lives easy, right? So one of the things that we do on every inspection is we take interior pictures of every room, and we list if it has smoke detectors, or carbon monoxide detectors, ceiling fans, filters, all that stuff. The board is really pushing that hard. So soon, if you don't have a software that can implement that seamlessly, you'll have this long list of where every single smoke detector is separately jumping all over your report. So filters, we can say, hey, our filters are see interior. There's a picture of everything. One of the other things we do to make your lives easier on pre-drywall inspections, in a market not too long ago, we were doing a lot of out-of-state framing inspections for new construction, and home inspectors would come out and they'd say, hey, you got a problem with this piece of framing in this room. Well, the problem is in a framing inspection, everything's just wood, right? You can't take a picture of a sign in the background and give somebody an idea exactly where it is. So we come through with blue tape and put it on that piece of frame and write on it. We still take a picture and document it, but that way your builder doesn't come back at you and say, hey, I sent my framer, but he couldn't find it. Yep. We also take videos of every single interior room in a pre-drywall inspection.
Wow.
So there's no longer a reason for you to say, hey, client, really would suggest you taking a GoPro and take a video. That way you see where the plumbing lines, we do that for you. And it's right there in the information tab. It's hidden in the report until you click it, so it doesn't jumble you up or any of that stuff. So, and we implement new things all the time. But today I'm going to hang out the meeting and try to get any little nugget of information I can to make myself better. And I guarantee you there'll probably be something I pick up and go, you know what? I could add this to my software and that can make their life easier. And that's a constant change for us. Nothing really goes away, but we add those little nuggets and we try to put them in a place where you have access to it without it jumbling up that report. So when you're making your repair request, you don't have to sort through all of it.
I love that so much. And again, from being in the business for so long, I can't tell you, I've literally had buyers cancel their contract just when they received the report. We haven't even talked through it. We haven't even discussed it. They freaked out. And half of the pages were, like he said, just informational, just explaining how this works and what you're seeing. But they get it and they're like, this house is a disaster. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with this house. Calm down. But they don't want to read. They looked at it. It's too many pages and they're just scared.
So going right back to the things we do different, right? So one of the things I talk to a lot of new home inspectors as they're kind of starting out. And I don't know how many people have been on an inspection when you come up to the inspection, and we encourage our agents and our buyers to come for at least the end of the inspection.
We're gonna talk about that too.
Because the
It's the only
verbiage.
time you want them there.
I will bore you for 2 hours.
No.
But the verbiage sometimes, and I'm sure you're gonna touch on this because you hinted around it, the verbiage sometimes is kind of set by the state and we can only change but so much, right? But if you're at the inspection and I'm showing you things, we can really answer those questions and get that comfort level where it needs to be about the things that really aren't a big deal. And we can talk about things that are a big deal. And I've been in the industry and long enough that I can really kind of give you a good idea of what the process is to repair. Can't help you with a dollar amount, right? Because that's constantly changing. But I can say, oh, this is how they usually fix this. It's really not that big a deal. If you get ahead of it, this is what they usually do. As far as that part goes. And then one of my favorite things, as far as the home inspectors, if you ever show up a report and you get there with the buyers and you say, okay, Mr. Home Inspector, what did you find? Well, I had a roof leak. Okay, where was it? That way, when you show up at one of my inspections, I'm sitting down, laptop open, phone hotspotted to it, report is up. I always tell my agents and my clients not to make fun of me because most of it's shorthand notes, right? There'll be some spelling errors, but every single picture I took is in that report. Every defect is in that report. So there's no surprise when the buyer gets it a day or two later and goes, oh, we didn't talk about that at the house. And there's no me going, oh, it's over here. Oh, it's in the crawl. I don't expect you to crawl, so you won't be able to see it. All right, I can show you the picture. This is what your report's going to look like. This is how you navigate it. This is how you go through it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to call. My contact information's there. And we do that on every inspection.
So you mentioned the state is pushing some new things. What new things are you seeing? Because I know it's so funny, we get surprised when we get an inspection report and I was like, when did an anti-tip bracket become the most important thing on an appliance?
Yeah.
And where are they? They don't exist. They're on all the delivery vans. I think they have a pile of them in the warehouse.
They're still in the warming drawer.
Yeah, and the agents just freak out. And I'm like, as long as your kid doesn't stand on the door of the stove, you'll be fine. But
Right.
yes, we will go to Lowe's and buy an anti-tip bracket.
$10, screw to the floor. Be
And
done.
most of the time the sellers are like, we're just gonna leave it here on top of the
Mhm.
stove.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and we use the, and it's perfect. We use the anti-tip bracket as kind of an icebreaker a lot of times
Yes.
as a joke because it really is. You nailed it. I mean, even new construction, sometimes they're not installed. But
I've
the
never
state,
seen one installed, ever.
Yep. But the state does require us to write it up. So there
Right.
are things because technically it's a safety concern if you have little kids or drunk friends, right? Then they're climbing on it and for the tip over. There's only 2 things that'll ever affect. But we do document it. And there's constant changes. You know, we have a board that's North Carolina's board is insanely active. I'm fortunate that I try to educate myself and stay ahead of those changes so we can explain what's coming. So the big stuff coming right now are HVAC systems, removing covers versus not removing covers. They're still going back and forth about that because there's things with the HVAC system that a home inspector cannot do. We cannot open certain panels. We cannot put gauges on systems. We're not licensed HVAC technicians, which is why I have the HVAC company that can do all that for us. But forever, the verbiage in the North Carolina State Board license requirement was that we were allowed to, but not required to, open the panels on air conditioned systems that would be considered owner maintenance panels, which is like nothing.
Yeah.
Right. Train has one system on a gas furnace that in their owner's manual, it says, hey, homeowner, you should open this once a year and look at it and make sure everything looks okay. So now the board's saying, hey, you have to let people know if you open them or don't open them. Smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors have always been a big thing, but that's going to be a lot more strict where it used to just be able, do you have them? Do they function? Now it's, do you have them? Do they function? List every room that it's in.
Yep.
On my software, we literally click the button that says there's a smoke detector in that interior section. And other softwares aren't capable of that. You literally, in the next probably year, you'll have a full section of your report that says smoke detectors, operable or defective, and it'll say list of rooms that are, and they will list new construction. It will literally list every individual bedroom separately, main living hall, the whole 9.
And just so you know, sometimes appraisals can be tied to this. So I had an appraisal get turned down because there was no carbon monoxide detectors in the house. So we had to pay the inspector and the appraiser to go back out and take a picture of the carbon monoxide detector that was literally the seller just plugged one into the wall and we're
Right.
good to go now. But
Yeah.
a lot of times appraisals can be tied to these inspection reports. So it's also important to make sure we're going through these and making sure that if this report is getting to the appraiser or the lender, that we have gone through this and make sure there's nothing that is a true safety hazard or violation.
And the home inspector takes some responsibility of that too, right? So we cannot count, even though personally, I believe they work as well, if not better. We cannot count carbon monoxide detectors that are plugged in. because they're not permanently installed and you, the seller, can just take it with you.
Hmm.
The appraisers
Sure.
can generally,
Right.
for me asking my appraiser knowledge, they can. So in my report, there is a note. If I say lack of carbon monoxide detectors, I have to say that for the state because there's no permanently installed. There is a note that will say, I did see carbon monoxide filters plugged into the wall. Please be advised. We as home inspectors are not allowed to count these, but other industries may. So the home inspectors take some fault because we can add those little things in that make your life a whole lot easier,
Yeah.
right? So instead of saying, well, why the home inspector say there's not one, there is one. Well, this is why we couldn't count that one because of this reason.
Perfect.
So.
Okay, well, I'm gonna jump in to kind of start to finish, but you hang out because I know I'm gonna lean on you for more questions.
Please,
and
please,
answers.
please.
So, again, I'm really excited. We have some new agents in the room and online that we can kind of talk about. So the way this process happens, I'm just gonna dumb it down so that y'all are experienced, just tune out for a minute. So the way this happens when you put somebody under contract, you always, as an agent, recommend them get a home inspection. If they don't, you make them feel so guilty. Because it never fails. At the end of the day, they're gonna blame you for it. That's why we have this fun professional services and disclosure form that says, I told you to get this and you said no, I don't want to hear about it. So get them a home inspection scheduled as soon as possible, because that is one of the first things that will kill your deal. I would go ahead and prepare your buyers. If you're looking at a home, for instance, that has, and again, as a new agent, you're not supposed to know all of this, but just seems to know, masonite siding that has some damage on it. Go ahead and say, listen, this is going to be on the home inspection. The house is recently painted. As long as it's not, we don't see a lot of water damage, you should be okay. They're going to be things that you see on your showing that you want to point out, and just go ahead and make the buyer aware. Sorry, I've been talking all morning. Just so you know, we're probably going to see this on a home inspection. Don't worry, I see this all the time. Some things we see all the time, and again, the experienced agents in the room, feel free to chime in, are some wood rot around door frames and things like that. You're going to see, if there's a spot on the ceiling, you always want to ask the listing agent, hey, has this already been addressed or repaired? Or if you see that something has been repainted recently, can you just tell me what happened here? Because what's going to happen is they had a leak, they had it fixed, he gets up in the attic and finds water spots, and all of a sudden the roof is leaking. Well, no, it may have been leaking, but now it's already been fixed, and now they're mad that the seller didn't disclose. I literally had somebody stop me at a festival we were at this weekend and talk to me for 30 minutes about our DDRA and our RPD, because he said, well, there was a sewer issue and sewer backed up in the house. They had to replace all the flooring. They had to do this. Shouldn't they have disclosed that? And I said, well, technically they had it fixed. They had a plumber come out, invoices, verified it. To the best of their knowledge, it was fixed. 3 weeks later, it happened again. Now, if it had happened for 6 months in a row, probably wasn't fixed. But again, they always come back, like you said, we take the fault. They always come back to us like, you should have found out that this happened. We're trying a way to know that. Go ahead, Keith.
Jen update coming up is going to address that in some cases due to the severity of the issue that it still needs to be disclosed. So we'll talk about that. I don't want to get into it.
No, that's fantastic, because number one that they need to talk about is when there's been a fire in the home.
Yes,
There's nothing that will make somebody terminate a contract. Once he gets in there and he's like, I see charred wood. What happened here? Oh, well, half the house caught on fire. We had to have it replaced.
What towards is like something like leaks
Mhm.
or a leaky roof that you don't know if that caused further issues such as mold growth in walls, blah, 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 blah. So they're trying to get ahead of opening a can of worms down the road that was caused by the original issue. So they're going to talk about that a lot in the Jen update as far as material facts and how they weigh on the severity of the original issue.
Yeah. So these people had moved into our state from another state, and they're like, where we're from, you have to disclose anything that has ever happened in that home. And I was like, well, we're a buyer beware state. And they're like, is that a thing? And I was like, literally, that's what North Carolina is called, is a buyer beware state. So it is important to know these things, but it's also important. The number one thing you can do as an agent is to over communicate and prepare them for what is going to happen when they get to the home inspection and they meet him. We talked about it a little bit. My number one rule is I tell the homeowner, the buyers are always like, we want to be there for the home inspection. Yes, I want you there, but let's go at the last 30 minutes to find what he found. There's no need in me and you both babysitting him for 3 hours. And 9 times out of 10, you can convince them to go at the end. And that is what you want to do. Because for 3 hours, all they're going to do is pick this house apart all over again. It's like a showing from times a million. Am I right? And then they want to touch all the personal stuff. And you're like, please just sit, crisscross applesauce, sit on your hands, don't touch anything. That is always my recommendation is, and I always say in my experience, the best thing so that it doesn't stress you out, is we're gonna meet him at the end and he's gonna show you personally everything he found. And then once we get his report, we're gonna go through it again. It's very, very important. Like you said, his report, it has the main points and he ranks them by color. Because like I said, if you've ever received that 85-page PDF, I'm like, I don't even want to read this. The picture is this big. I'm trying to figure out what he's talking about. And like you said, everything is made to be a big deal. What did you call it? The DDID?
Yeah, so North Carolina is the only state that uses DDID. So basically, it's a way that we have to write. It basically turns most comments into a paragraph. So it literally is a format. We have to describe what we're looking at, so we can't just say this is rotten, right? The trim on blah blah blah. So we have to describe the defect. We have to direct who takes care of it, and the implication if you don't. You can do it in whatever order, but all 4 of those points have to be made. And then there's things that are suggested language, right? Like polybutylene piping. The state basically has a paragraph that they say, you don't have to say this, but it better sound real close to this exact statement. So
yeah,
a lot of that kind of stuff.
And that was explained to me a couple years ago. It made perfect sense. This is why the anti-tip bracket is made to sound like the most important thing in the house. And it's because I found that this bracket was not installed. If this is not installed and your child stands on the front of the door, then serious bodily harm can happen. And it's like, how did this become a thing? And so that is, like you said, the dumbest thing that they have to do, but that's the reason it sounds like such a major ordeal. And this is where you have to educate your buyers and say, when you see some of the small stuff, it's going to look like a big thing because they have to write it up that way. And it's important too for the inspector to kind of explain that, hey, this is going to look like a paragraph. It's like giving you 10 fingers and really all you needed was a pinky, but the state makes me give you 10 fingers of what I have seen and touched and felt. So, one of the biggest things I always recommend, if you can, try to negotiate concessions versus repairs. And there is nothing worse than trying to negotiate the type of repair, who's doing the repair, whether or not it was done properly. And for the love, if you don't have to provide a receipt other than it was completed, get them something saying the repair was done. Do not show them what it cost unless it was an astronomical amount. I have provided receipts and they're like, oh, this only cost $300. They didn't do it right. This should have at least cost $1,100. There's no way that was $300. And I'm like, should have never. So go ahead, Keith.
A couple points on that. I've always found that as a seller, they're going through moving as well. So as easy as you can make the process on them, where they're not the ones having to call out all these vendors to get all those repairs. If you're just throwing the number out, 9 times out of 10, they look at it like, so this is it, just I clean my hands of it.
Let me be done.
To go further on that, I've also seen where, and a good strategy I use is I'll go ahead and get my vendors out there and get estimates. And instead of saying, well, my buyer wants $5,000 in seller paid closing costs, to reaffirm that we are actually going to get those repairs done, we will say, we want those checks cut at closing. So the seller doesn't think that we're just trying to nickel and dime and pop that money and not really use it. So we earmark those funds. So in the seller's mind, they're confident that, okay, this problem exists. They're asking for this money. They've already got the estimate done. So I know they're not overestimating the money they need. And I know that they're actually going to use it rather than just taking the $5,000 and sticking it in their pocket. I've gotten really, really good response rates of yes, because, they have that confidence that we're not just trying to, take them for more money or whatever. We're actually going to fix those issues.
Exactly. No, and that is an absolute excellent point. And I mean, I can't tell you how many repair requests I've gotten, and there was maybe $3,000 worth of stuff. They're like, we need 15. And I'm like, okay, why do you need $15,000? And then it sets the wrong tone with the sellers, and they think they're just trying to get one over on you.
And one more quick thing, now that we're in the back to like the buyer's market, if you are negotiating seller paid closing costs in the original contract, you have to make sure that you're not overextending yourself on whatever type of loan your buyer's getting, because there are certain limits on seller concessions. However, if those are checks written at closing, they do not count as a seller's concession. So just something, I've been in a situation where I had 5,000 closing costs up front, then we were going to ask for repair money, and then I had to go back because we were going to get over and they weren't going to be able to get all that money. So something to be very, very careful of, that you're not overextending your buyer's ability to get that money at closing.
And for the record, I just got a list from one of our favorite lenders who tells us exactly which loan type, how much they can have in seller contributions. So we'll post that in our page as well. Because we've been dealing with that a lot now with our new construction, now that some builders are offering incentives, some buy downs, things like that. And then you want to negotiate closing costs, and then you want to negotiate concessions as well. I've got a list of every loan type and what percentages. Charity?
Yeah, every single inspection report, we get estimates for every single thing. And we tell them ahead of time, just so you know, this inspection report will be 50 pages, even if there's nothing wrong with the house.
Yep.
Just be prepared for that, don't freak out. And we're gonna get an estimate of every single thing. For your own buyers, like peace of mind, because you could see something that looks like it's really small, and behind the scenes, that can cost you thousands of dollars to fix, and you can see something that seems like it's a really big deal, and it costs $100 to fix. So don't freak out yet until we get estimates. And then we have like something to actually work with, to send to the listing agent and say, we're not making this up, like this is what it's gonna cost. And at least it's like you said, it creates an environment of like, we're not trying to get one over on you, this is just what we're looking at. And then if you're getting, I hate the idea of sellers doing repairs.
Me too. Oh, gosh.
Then it's like, to whose standard?
Exactly.
And then you gotta go back there and re-inspect, and then it's gonna like, that's a problem, and now you're gonna delay closing, like, first of all, just give me the money.
Right.
And then if it's a negotiating point, if the repairs cost 10,000, I can maybe get 5, right? Like versus like, I'll do this repair versus that repair, you know, and they may not actually need to do those repairs right away, but they have some interest closing costs. But yeah, we do the repair, we get estimates for everything for our buyer's peace of mind too. So like, hey, it's actually not that big of a deal, right? Don't freak out. And then that helps them understand what they're walking into when they actually close the house too.
And I
I tell my seller, I tell my buyers, I put them in the position, I say, if you're selling your house and a buyer asks you to get something repaired, who are you gonna go get to repair that? The cheapest labor you can find.
Yeah.
So do you want that to be the person fixing what's gonna be your house? So that's how I always end up turning the conversation to the buyer and agreeing, because I mean, obviously the buyer wants the house to be perfect, you know, when they buy it, but like, wouldn't you rather hire somebody that you know, like, and trust, rather than the seller, you know, finding the cheapest, or Uncle Harry that used to be, you know, an electrician or something, coming in and do it.
Right.
Yeah.
On that point, and I'm gonna go to you in just a second. Also, when you're filling out the DDRA, if the seller, if you are negotiating any repairs, you need to put the verbiage in there that it needs to be done by a licensed contractor, because they will call Joe Blow, just like he said, and receipts will be provided. So our verbiage is always any and all repairs to be made by a licensed contractor. I'm gonna say something funny in a minute, but make sure they're by a licensed contractor and all receipts to be provided. Make sure you also know what trades are licensed. There are certain trades that are not licensed. There's no such thing, and tell me if I'm wrong, there's no such thing as a roofing license. So they're always, I need a licensed roofer. Go find one. There's not a thing. That's not a thing. You know,
But you have to be careful with word license, because they could just have like a privileged license. They're licensed because they. have
licensed in their
privilege
trade,
license.
maybe we
Yeah,
could
so
say,
you
or
gotta
if
be-
the trader.
Also, a handyman doesn't need to be licensed to do a lot of things. and
Right.
that's- Sometimes there's some pushback on that too.
That's why I try to, and I'm just saying this, again, I work more the seller side, and so I tend to laugh when they're like, a licensed roofer. I'm like, that's not a thing, but I will get you a roofer with an invoice. And so
Yeah.
break it down. If there's something that requires a license, if it is plumbing, if it is electrical,
Yeah.
something that requires a license, list that out. Take the time to be specific as you can possibly be. Please
I've
don't,
seen, like, in workman-like condition, like I've seen people put stuff like in there.
yes.
Like a re-inspectable, like to code or something like that, but yeah, you have to be specific.
Yeah, if you don't have enough room, use an extra page, but under no circumstances, please do not send over a DDRA that says repair items 1, 4, 7,
Oh my
3,
God.
11. Oh, thank you. Thank you for making everybody stop, figure out what it is. How do you want, I mean, now you've
What do
created
you want
set,
from this?
exactly.
This is just tells, because your inspector says, have someone review. Okay, so you're asking me to have someone review, okay, it's reviewed.
Looked at
Not asking me
it,
to do
done,
anything,
thank
right?
you.
We've gotta be specific.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
No, I've got so much to add. I'll be really quick. So we use qualified professionals as our terminology. We do that for 2 reasons. One, because not everybody's licensed, right? 2, it gives, the state makes us direct, go back to the DDA, who to fix it. A lot of times you know better, or the situation might know better, so we use qualified professional. That way, in your repair request, you can determine if that qualified professional is a handyman, or if your buyers are more comfortable with a licensed general contractor, right?
I'm glad you said that because most inspection reports say a licensed general contractor. I'm like, we don't need a
They
licensed
license
general
everything.
contractor to put in an anti-tip
They say
bracket.
license everything, and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
And I understand why they do it, because the state
Seaway.
kind of leans that way, right? But we can do that by saying qualified professional and hit all the state requirements and still give you the flexibility of determining. One of the things for, and it sounds like it's kind of a mixed group of kind of new and experienced. State of North Carolina, one really important thing to know about home inspectors is in state of North Carolina, it is non-invasive, meaning we can't tear open a wall, we can't get in. So when you're sitting here going, oh, I get estimates done, it's so important, right? Because we can't see past what we can see. We're a generalist, right? We are generally the only person that has 3 to 4 hours uninterrupted to fine tooth comb a house. But that said, that's why you get that big list. We're a generalist, we lead you to the problem. So these estimates, I'm just sitting here clapping in my head and nodding along because it's such an important part of like the follow-up.
Right.
So I just wanted to give you a perspective from the other side
Yeah.
of how just wonderful that is to hear.
Awesome. Go ahead, Keith.
Talking about, bulletproofing deals when you're under contract, if you ever get a DDRA, like April just said, where it just was immediately get on the phone, send it back to the buyer agent, say, I need to know exactly what the seller is expecting in each one of these situations. The situation I went through, roof or branches touching roof. Obviously showed up in the inspection report, branches are touching the roof, can cause damage to the roof, blah, 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 blah. And all they gave us was the number. We need this taken care of. The seller literally took a broom or something and knocked the branches that were touching the roof off. The seller wanted the whole half of the tree cut off.
Or the buyer.
The buyer wanted the whole half of the tree cut off, but we satisfied what they said fixed. Well, guess what? 4.1 said the branches were touching the roof. The branches are no longer touching the roof.
Ta-da! Yeah.
They wanted the possibility of the branches, they wanted it further done. So I always said from that point forward, instead of trying to be sneaky and, I'm gonna be great for my seller, we're just gonna do these couple things. Literally, it's worth your time and effort to go through and say, okay, this thing is an issue that you pointed out. How exactly is your buyer expecting this issue to be repaired or resolved? So we're making sure that they're not surprised, a day before closing of, oh, I thought they were gonna repair it like this, or I thought it was gonna get replaced completely. Because a lot of the verbiage is repair or replace. And when you're given that option,
Yeah.
the seller's gonna be like, well, we're definitely just gonna repair it. Yeah.
Yes.
Conversation before you can write a DDRA.
Yes.
That is the point, like, if you have already done your request, you need to get a phone call listing agent. Hey, you need to send them the inspection report, so that nobody's confused, listing agent take back.
And again, that's
Now
why.
it's material facts they have to disclose.
Yep. And if anybody's been paying attention to the real estate bulletin lately, all the real estate commission is coming down on is these non-disclosed items on a home inspection report. I've never in my life, they ain't got trust accounts to worry about now. So they are coming out their inspection. So that's why I wanted to have this class, because if you've been in the market for the last 3 years, we haven't been having these conversations. Nobody knew how to have these conversations, repair or replace. What do we do? Concessions or this? And a point to what Keith said, these sellers are stressed. They're moving. They're worried about packing. At the end of the day, I cannot tell you, best, sweetest sellers ever. I'm not going to do that. I'm packing. I don't care today. Take it or leave it. Just tell them to take it or leave it. It's the day of closing. They're not going to back out. And I'm like, thank you for just ruining my day, because now I'm going to Lowe's and I'm buying garage. I'm doing, whatever we can do to satisfy these buyers. So it was literally, I'm not driving to Durham to put the vent cover back on the floor, and the buyers refused to close because the vent cover was not placed back. Like,
money, please, just ask for money. Really, at the end,
Please.
all of this can be avoided if you just ask for money.
And yes, and my conversation with the buyers to that regard are, just like we've been talking about, who do you want making these repairs? Don't you have somebody in your family that does electrical or plumbing? You'll probably be able to get it done better and less expensive. So let's just get the money to put towards it at the end of the day. And that way we know the work was done right and how you want it. And I always say, even if you're new, say, I've heard horror stories of sellers putting lipstick on a pig. To that fact, I'm so glad you brought up HVAC inspections. That was not a thing 10 years ago. They would take the little thermometer. All right, we're within the temperature. We're good to go. Nobody was doing HVAC inspections. And our verbiage as agents was, well, if something's wrong, you have a warranty. We can get you a home warranty. We used to do home warranties all the time, $500, $600. Something's wrong with your HVAC. Well, Here's the thing, HVAC is leaking, the Freon's leaking. What's the seller gotta do? Put Freon in it. Does that fix the leak? Nope. So I had some of my favorite clients buy a house. 2 days later, it's out. The Freon was leaking. Seller never disclosed it. No problem. I got a home warranty. Guess what the home warranty company said? I actually have a great home warranty rep who went to bat for us, and we did get it taken care of. But 2 days after they closed, it was an $800 repair. And we didn't have HVAC inspection. That wasn't a thing then, but it was a slight, you know, when you do a warranty claim, a lot of times they want to see the inspection report to make sure it was not a, for lack of a better word, pre-known condition or underlying condition. And so we sent them like, the home inspector mentioned there might be a differential. So I don't know that we're going to cover that. And it was kind of like, well, it was 90 degrees that day and you're only allowed what percentage, 15?
Yeah, so we do it a temperature split, you know,
Right.
10 to 13 degrees, you know, bare minimum.
But when it's your 95-degree humidity days, there's no way you're going to get within that differential. And so that's on your inspection report. HVAC goes out, capacitor, whatever goes out the day after they close.
Or
That's
seasonal.
yes.
You know, if it's summertime, wintertime, you know, we can't run the hot and cold, right? And because we can't put gauges on. I'm so passionate about HVAC.
No, you're good.
I
I'm
work
with you.
so hard to get these like streamlined, look good, put in your dashboard, make life easy, flat rated. You know, I've had a lot of sit down conversations of what exactly they're going to check. What do you need to include? And they check capacitors and leaks. But an audible leak detector is going to sniff out a Freon leak. If you go to my house right now, as a home inspector, who trains people and been doing this, I could not find a problem with my air conditioning system. As a homeowner, I know I have an evaporator leak in my air handler in my crawl space that I've got charged with Freon by my HVAC company that we're getting ready to fix for a little while. But as a home inspector, it just got Freon in it 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It's going to test literally perfect. But an HVAC company or the HVAC inspection catch it in 5 minutes.
Well, and to that regard, as a seller, do you put that on RPD? Because technically I have fixed the problem. There is not a current known issue. So is that something that needs to be disclosed? You don't know until it goes out 3 days after your closing and you're like, oh, you know what would have been good? An HVAC inspection.
It's
So
what we
I'm-
have the least amount of scope on.
Yeah, I'm really glad that that's a thing now. I think that's new in like the last 4 or 5 years. I'm also passionate about home warranties. We'll have a rep come in and talk about that too. But I have one personally on my house. Our HVAC units were 93s and they're amazing. They would run you out of the house. We knew one was on its last leg and we put a home warranty on, had it replaced, took up, you know, so much of the cost. And so I'm glad, again, we're back to this market. I'm a big proponent of making your buyers feel better about let's get the seller to pay for a home warranty because they really do cover a lot of things. Appliances, you know, if you get a good rep, you get a good warranty, it's good peace of mind for, especially for your new buyers that just spent a lot of money on this house. A couple other things I'd love to get your opinion on. One of my favorite responses that I have when I get a DDRA is whether or not is this an improvement or a repair. Now, I am not negotiating improvement. So when you send me a report that says there's moisture around the front of the house needs gutters, that to me is an improvement, not a repair.
Right? This really falls on the home inspector. So we do say, consider adding gutters to a home. Gutters are important. They're very inexpensive, might keep moisture issues. But we don't put it as a repair item unless we have a crawl space that has elevated moisture levels and your house doesn't have gutters. And we got efflorescence on the foundation wall. Meaning as a home inspector, if I have evidence that the lack of gutters is causing some moisture in the crawl space, then my comment on adding gutters might be in the moisture comment in the crawl space. You have slight elevated moisture in your crawl space, you know, the first steps are vapor barrier and adding gutters to the home. So it really depends on, every house is situational.
Right.
So it really depends on the situation of the house. A slab home, but the gutters are just keeping your head from getting wet. And, you know, it does kind of take some of the rain off of the foundation around the slab and soil erosion over an extended amount of time. The only improvement comments that we make are smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors. We put them in blue as an observation and say basically, hey, consider updating. GFCIs, home inspectors write up lack of GFCIs as a safety concern all the time. On a 72 build, GFCIs were not required in the kitchen in 72 build. So we make a comment just saying, hey buyer, just so you're aware, you know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe, but it'll be very easily advertised as this wasn't required when this home was constructed. And it's mostly to make our buyers aware, we know there's no GFCIs, this is why I didn't make the report.
But keep in mind, 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna read all of that. So it's our job to say, now, when we get this report, it is not the seller's job to bring this house up to current code. So a couple things that are always gonna be on your reports that you can save yourself when you're on the showings. Look in the crawl space. I'm not saying you have to get in there and crawl around, but I will always open the crawl space door and say, all right, guys, there's no vapor barrier in here. So let me tell you what you're gonna see on the home inspection report. First thing he's gonna say, we need a vapor barrier. Second thing, we might have some high moisture, but he's gonna let us know exactly how much. Guess what? 9 times out of 10 of a vapor barrier will fix that. $700 will be on our way. So as soon as you get that, as soon as you know that, go ahead and let the buyers know, we're gonna have this issue, just mentally prepare yourself. Don't worry, I'm sure we can probably get it taken care of. But his comment's gonna freak them out because it's gonna be elevated moisture in their crawl space. And what do they hear when they hear moisture? Mold. Well, now there's mold everywhere. My kid has allergies and oh my gosh. Now, I mean, you're not gonna find a house that doesn't have moisture in a crawl space ever, unless it's sealed. Yeah, and that's another conversation you have to talk people through. Keep in mind, we are a very moisture-rich area. We have high humidity. I love all the northerners are like, why don't you have any basements? I'm like, y'all know what a water table is? Do you want an in-ground pool? I mean, so,
And it's important. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
It's just kind of adding on, right? Like we talked about earlier, like we have set things. So WVIRs, those termite companies, 18% is their magic number would when they test that they have to comment there's high moisture. For home inspectors, it's 20%. If I put a moisture meter in there and it's 20%, I have to write it as high moisture contact. We never, ever said we're mold in a home inspection.
y'all aren't allowed to, right?
Ever.
It's fungal
You
growth.
better, people can do it, but no, we're not allowed to.
Good
because
old
you're not
fungal growth.
Testing it for mold.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to mold, I've got a good company to do air quality tests and make a test to the house, scrub it and all that. But just so you know, the high moisture, like if we have a vapor barrier, doesn't have a vapor barrier, we're always going to suggest one. Always. It's cheap, inexpensive, and it's proven to work. But that comment will not say moisture, but that 20%, once you hit that 20% number, you'll get a picture and it'll be elevated. So-
Well, and it's funny because a lot of people up north think that the vapor barrier is there just so you're not walking in the dirt underneath your crawl space. And I'm like, no, this keeps the moisture that is in our dirt from coming up, hitting your house. It hits that plastic and goes back down. So, you know, there's a lot of things that you can kind of calm their fears while you're at the showing and just mentally preparing them for what's going to happen. So when you send the report, they're not just, because they will freak out. Mhm.
You get used to that smell when you open that crawl space.
And just know as a newer agent, you're gonna walk houses with the home inspector many times, and you'll develop these things of, okay, I know, kind of like you're saying, they're gonna point this out, they're gonna put that out. But also you have to take into consideration that this may affect your offer on the house. This may affect the amount of due diligence you're gonna put on the house, because ultimately, if we're walking through an older house and I've got a laundry list of stuff that I already knows is on the inspection, I'm not gonna encourage my buyer to put up a lot of due diligence. Now, if we're walking through a house that was built in 2019, whatever you want to run and check, we're probably gonna be okay, because I don't, your 3-year-old house.
Right.
Fingers crossed, there's not gonna be something that's gonna cause you to walk away. We're looking at a 30-year-old house, and there could be numerous things. So, as you're walking through, you'll develop this, common problems or things that you can see, that are gonna be on the inspection report,
You
but it
should
also.
absolutely be having those conversations before you write offers.
Yes.
So you've got to know these things, even in our previous market. That should be the conversation that you're having. You should be pulling comps.
Mhm.
What do you think you might have fixed for? What are some potential repairs? And understand they don't have to do anything for you.
Right.
They're good at negotiating, but they don't have to.
Understand
So
the way our
you
North
did
Carolina
exactly
contracts
like
are.
this.
Yes.
Will you be okay with that? And then anything else is gravy. So if you're setting an expectation before you even write the contract, it just makes the whole transaction that much smoother.
The other part of that I come across a lot as a listing agent, if you're getting a septic inspection done, septic inspectors are gonna want to have that tank pumped before they inspect it so they can see everything. Most buyer agents assume the seller is just gonna be willing to do that. I didn't negotiate that. I didn't say I was gonna have a septic pump. My seller didn't care that their septic tank's full. And so if you know you're gonna have septic inspection, I always, if you're not asking for anything, I'm like, can we have a $350 in seller paid closing costs to have the septic pump in before we have our septic inspection done, because I know the septic inspector is gonna wanna have that done. You have in my opinion, 100% chance of getting that agreed upon versus after, because I will never agreed upon it after. I said, you knew you're gonna have a septic inspection done. If it was a requirement, it was gonna be pumped, we should have negotiated that as a part of this contract.
what are some other common things that come on? I'm trying to think, broken seals and windows.
Oh, that's a
I
good
think
one.
I think the second deal I did, I thought I was about to get my buyer a whole new house full of windows. Oh my gosh.
Look at this.
And of course, the inspector didn't, you know, they make it sound not scary, but, oh, these windows are broken.
Do they write them up? The fog and sweat windows, we don't write them up.
Really?
I might give you one general comment, but that's one of the things the board is pushing us to stop doing. The
Hey.
window, it makes no sense. The window is functioning
As
as
intended.
a window. It's.
That's not other rebuttal.
As long as it opens and closes and does, right? Like, we try to take as much job away from you as we can to make your life easy, but I tell all agents, foggy windows are on you. That, because there's a couple reasons. One, their function is intended. Two, this one might be fogged at 10 in the morning. At 1 in the afternoon, afternoon inspection, it might not
Right.
be, right? Or temperature difference. It's,
See, y'all don't understand. We used to negotiate. We had a guy, I can't remember his name, but he would come around and he could put the argon gas back in the
back in the
window.
windows. Some of them you still, some of them you still can, some of them you can't open up.
Yeah, so 2 points on windows, because I've got a listing right now that's like that, and the seller's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to replace all these windows. I was like, no, you're not. We're not really doing that anymore. But first of all, he's a contractor. I'm like, just go ahead and get me a price and a lead time. So if we do have to negotiate this, we know what numbers we're working on. It's not this astronomical number that it used to be. But for 2, I said, I'm gonna explain to these people that these windows are functioning as intended. Let me tell you, every window in my house looked like that when I bought it 10 years ago. First thing I said, I'm gonna get all these replaced. Guess how many I've replaced?
No. You and everybody else.
Nobody ever replaces them. So just negotiate concessions and be done with it. But if the house is under 20 years old and the seller is the original owner, there's a gold sticker that is at the bottom of the sash. 9 times out of 10, if they have not dry rotted and fell or somebody pulled them off, that is your warranty sticker. These windows typically have a 10 or 20-year warranty. If you can find the manufacturer, they will send you a replacement window for free. So your M&Ws, things like that, if you can find that sticker, I tell all my new homeowners, I'm like, take this sticker. It's in every window. Just put it in one of your drawers. So you never lose it. If one of these windows were to fail, they should replace it. It depends on the warranty. They used to be 30 or 20. I think a lot of them are 10 now. It just depends on the brand. But you can call the manufacturer and they will ship it. They won't install it, but they'll give you the window for free because it's still within warranty.
You got polybutylene piping. I dealt with it a lot of it in Cary when I did some deals out in Cary. Quick little funny story. $100,000 condo in Cary, helping somebody buy his investment property. His mom was a agent in Florida. Polybutylene piping in Florida is like the end of the world.
Home insurance won't even insure.
They won't even insure houses with poly, but so I have this agent in Florida calling me, telling me that they're expecting all the, and a condo at that, they want all the piping in place.
That's
And I said,
easy
well,
to
you know,
do.
Up here, it's just kind of taking, as long as it's not leaking, we just kind of take it, and she goes, are you kidding me? You know, and I actually had my client ended up calling, he said probably 15 different condo complexes around there with all the, you know, and he said he couldn't find one that didn't have polybutylene, and he said, why are you replacing it? And they're like, why should I?
Usually
It's something, and we could probably do a whole class on polybutylene, but it's something that's very common with the verbiage that's in a lot of the inspection reports. They make it sound like it's the end of the world. I have never been in a deal with polybutylene piping where thankfully have never had it leaking, but never been in a situation where it's polybutylene piping and we were able to negotiate a type of replacement of that as long as it was still working the way it was supposed to work.
So that's another one of those. Well, it's functioning as intended. And the thing with polybutylene to know is as long as it's not the piping, it's the fittings
Yeah.
that really were the recall. And as long as the fittings are not leaking, the plumbing is functioning as intended, and it will continue to as long as you keep an eye on those fittings. And honestly, you can have a plumber go and replace all the fittings and you're still fine. So one other thing that got brought up that I had an issue with is if somebody has had the foundation repaired. So if they have called Ramjack or something like that, I had a deal literally sitting at the closing table. Seller was so nice, lovely, sweet people. And they're like, hey, here's the warranty and everything of where we had the foundation fixed. And the buyer is like, what? Of course it was dual agency. Of course it was. Just with me and one of my teammates. And he was like, what do you mean the foundation was fixed? And I was like, yeah, there was there was some settlement issues a couple years ago, but no worries. It's got a lifetime warranty from Ramjack. Buyers got up and walked away at the table. Well, my seller's sweetly handing them their whole warranty package. So that was one of those things that did I disclose wrong? So if you notice on the RPD, it says, are there any foundation issues or have there been any substantial repairs? That is where I should have said, actually, Ramjack came in, but good news, you've got a lifetime warranty. But just something else to be aware of. If you see movement or on that RPD, it has said that there has been foundation issues or they have been repaired, ask for the warranty information because not all of them are lifetime.
I think that's what they're kind of leading to on that gen update of if there was a major issue, were there repairs to that major issue?
Yeah.
So,
Two more things I'm gonna hit on real fast and then we're running out of time. Radon freaks everybody out. There are pockets of radon. It's not everywhere. If you have a basement home, go ahead, prepare your buyers. Hey, we're gonna make sure we get a radon test on this. I'm not worried about it. You know, it's something that can be fixed, but because it's a basement, that's typically where we see it the most because you've got, you know, some of your property underground. There are random pockets like in Glen Laurel, there's some pockets of radon and Flowers Plantation. There's a
Riverwood.
big one in Wake Forest,
Riverwood.
Riverwood too. Yeah,
Don't
so-
ever assume that just because I had off Timber Drive, off Tryon Road near NC State. I mean, it's just, and the weird part, like, it's hit and miss. One house could have it and the rest of the neighborhood could be fine, or vice versa. It is very weird, but like I said, don't assume, like I was in Timber Drive, I got it back, I was like, are you serious? We're on Timber Drive.
Right.
You never think radon issues out there, but you know, like I said, I never.
So it's wrong with us Garner kids.
Yeah.
It's the radon.
Radon, so never assume that you're in an area or that because you've never heard of it being an issue, always get them. And I know what the next words out of your mouth can be, $800, put a system in, you never have to worry about it again, and it's monitored.
Right.
You know, and it's monitored, so you have a, you know, readout of what the levels are always, so you always have a peace of mind, but.
So for those that don't know, if you ever see a house, if you're showing the house and there's this like white tube thing that's sticking off the side of the house with a little vent on it, and your buyers are like, what's that? That is a radon mitigation system. And so they're just moving radon through the house and say, this is exactly what's supposed to happen. This is, and y'all remember from real estate school, this is a natural earth causing gas that may or may not cause cancer. And so they've done what they need to do to get it out of the house. But I mean, I had the worst one I had was in Wake Forest, and it was a slab home in the middle of the neighborhood. We were shocked. It was like a 28% insanity. They had to have vents going through the closets, but I've seen it in condos, and it was in the granite and the concrete. The radon's in the granite and the concrete.
But I'd say also be careful, and I'm gonna pick on home inspectors, right? Also, it's always a good idea to make sure that home inspector knows, one, he's using the right equipment, right? Continuous run machines, no more charcoal cans. You can take two of them, send them off to the lab side by side, they'll come back completely different. Like, it needs a continuous run machine. Also, they need to know where to place them. They shouldn't be in a kitchen. They shouldn't be in a room with a fan. They shouldn't be, I mean, like, there's very specific requirements that can make those levels get elevated quick. Granite is absolutely one of them, and we came behind to retest for a seller agent, and they said, you know, that number's so high. Jeremy, do you mind coming in and dropping one of your machines off? Okay, no problem. You know, anything to help you out. And we came and their radon machine was sitting in the kitchen
On granite.
on the granite countertop. Like, they're supposed to be on stand, right? Literally sitting on the countertop. And I walked in and I was like, I'll never tell you what to do, but you need to, whatever you're negotiating, just stop. I can guarantee this number's elevated. And it ended up coming back well below.
What's your experience, because I've seen different verbiage in new construction contracts when dealing with radon, are you seeing that they're pretty much open to radon testing still and doing the systems?
Yeah, they're just, so you have some buyers that even if it comes in within normal levels, they still want it mitigated. And you have to explain to them, there's no, if it's under the 4, whatever, PQs, whatever, nobody is obligated to fix it. And this is not something for you to freak out about. It's probably in the mall that you just left. And you've already been exposed to it. So most new, I mean, some of your nationals, it doesn't matter what you find. They're not going to be responsible for any type of mitigation.
So a little inside information, Lennar, I'm sure everybody.
We
heard
just
of.
love this.
Yeah, Lennar is only allowing radon testing to be done by one very specific national accreditation, which no radon tester has, that particular one. If you're ever in that situation, if you happen to remember, call me and I'll give you the contact. The one guy in North Carolina that can do radon. Not all of their neighborhoods are going that way right now. We can still get them, no problem. But that will be their nationwide implication in the next 2 years. Lennar will only allow like very, very specific accreditation to come and do a radon test. So if you run into that, don't fret. I got it.
Yeah.
I got it.
One other thing I'm gonna hit on before we get done, because you mentioned it earlier too, and it's something I think we're gonna see a lot more of is the well testing. go ahead and prepare your buyers. They're gonna, 9 times out of 10, it's gonna pop with something. As long as it doesn't pop with me, tell me if I'm wrong, as long as it doesn't pop with like lead, we should be okay. You know what, we're gonna chlorinate. As a listing agent, before I know inspection's done, I tell all my sellers, go pour Clorox down your well, because you run it through the house. Because it's just, I mean, it's, that should be a maintenance thing that people do anyway, just to
Right.
clear everything out. 9 times out of 10, this bacteria is coming from sitting in the line before, you know, you go to my house upstairs, we don't ever use that plumbing. So that water is sitting in those lines. If you tested it coming out of the faucet in my daughter's bathroom, I guarantee it's gonna pop with something, because it's been sitting there.
Right.
All water's going to.
Well,
You
almost guarantee,
almost guarantee now that the market we're into, that we're gonna see the pop in those positive tests because the house sitting on the market.
Yes.
Absolutely, been sitting there for a little while.
Our original purchase was a house that sat on the market for 7 months, and it was our first time buying a home, and oh my God, there's bacteria in our water.
Yeah.
And we're like, no, it's very easy to fix, it's just because nobody's used this well in 7 months, it's just been sitting there.
So, one of the things I want to add on the well inspection, right, like, when you call me for a well inspection, I will ask you, because I know our industries are a little different. When I say well inspection, I don't mean water quality test, right? And we use it, our industries use that term differently and back and forth. When I say well inspection, now, we can also add a water quality test. We can add a water quality test specific for HFA, yeah, the whole 9. But I'm talking function of the well. The pump works, the gallon minutes are good. So just to add on what you're saying, like, if you need a water quality test for a vehicle, right, there's fire, then, you know, I need a water quality test, and I'll ask you which, and you, like, they'll always come back.
I'm glad you said that, because every time I order a well test, they only check the water quality. They don't actually
never
check
check the
the
well.
pump.
They're
And
two
the
different
well.
things. Yeah, they're 2 different things.
And I had one, it was an older home, and I was a listing agent, and luckily, gosh, I went to church with these people, but luckily the seller owned a well, the buyer owned a well company. The bladder failed 2 days after they moved in. And I was like, well, didn't you have a well inspection done? And because we had treated the well for what was found in the water quality
And the
test,
water
but
quality
they didn't
test.
actually check the well components itself, and the bladder failed. And luckily the buyer was like, you know what, you're right, I do this for a living. We
Yeah.
should have done that, but
So if you go to schedule a well inspection with another home inspector, make sure, you know, you clarify. I
Water
want a well
quality
inspection and
and-
a water quality, or I just, you know, it's 5 years old, I just want water quality, because they are, our industry terms
right.
are different.
And for new construction, there's pre-drywall inspection and regular inspection.
Yes. So I'm you know, we do a lot of new construction. I will tell you, you also need to find out what the builder's stance is on that. They should allow you a pre-drywall inspection. I don't know of any that don't. However, most of them want to have the inspection. Let me put my buyer and my seller brain. As a buyer agent, you want to have the pre-drywall inspection done once rough-ins are complete, before the insulation drywall goes up, but you want to see where all these pipes and electrical and everything else is. Listing agent brain, I'm not letting you come out there and you're coming out before rough-ins, and that's it. Because the builder, 9 times out of 10, is not going to find anything that your home inspector finds that the county inspector would pass. I know, I'm just telling you.
And I know these guys, I grew up here, these county inspectors are amazing.
They are.
They get 20 minutes a house.
Yeah.
I get 2 hours.
Listen, I'm on the
It's just-
HBA
I
board.
know,
I'm
I
with
know,
you.
it's just-
But I'm
it's
just telling
it's
you,
different.
prepare your buyers. If you're representing a buyer, the seller may say, you can have all the inspections you want, but we're not gonna fix anything that the county does not ding us on.
We've met
But
industry standards, is
if
typically
it's-
the verbiage.
Yes, our verbiage is, it's within industry standards. So just prepare your buyers. We're gonna have this done for our own knowledge. Don't freak out, because he is gonna nitpick everywhere that there's not the full amount of fire stop that should be in every orifice of the house.
Every hole that goes.
Every hole has to have fire stop. Whereas, is it really, your house is not gonna fall down if we're missing a hole of fire stop and it gets missed by the building inspector.
Yeah.
Now, if it's a, major structural issue, and the reason I say buyer agent before trades, a lot of HVAC and plumbers love to cut through I-joists and, make a cutout, that changes the structural integrity of that joist. And then that's what we see a lot of times 15 years from now, you go to sell it and you get the home inspector in the attic, and they, all of a sudden it's like, why is this line? And it's like, here is the joist, and they literally cut a hole through it. And I was like, well, there went that.
And the builders are
Soapbox
usually,
for a
I've
moment.
never had a builder. I have a good relationship with builders. I was in due diligence.
The ones we represent are good, so I feel like they,
I've never had one.
Yeah.
Ever on a framing issue.
okay.
I'm gonna hop on the soapbox for a moment. As a buyer's agent, please, for the love of God, if you plan on doing a pre-drywall inspection, you let the builder know. And do not be mad if you call them and they say, we've already started drywall, because we are not stopping.
Yeah, that is something you need to know in new construction. It moves very fast. As soon as they get signed off on by the county, insulation's going up. It's not a matter of a week, it's a matter of hours typically. So if you know that's something you're gonna have done, go ahead and let the listing agent know and be very on top of it with the listing agent. When you pass or when that framer leaves, we're getting in there. And that's something.
And sometimes you may have to watch it because we don't know. They don't give us the schedules.
Yes. The other thing you need to know as a buyer's agent, especially in new construction, is concrete cracks. We're doing a lot of slab houses out here, especially right now. We just have one. They're like, oh, there's so many cracks in the concrete. We're just worried. I was like, concrete's going to do two things. It's going to get hard and it's going to crack. Now, and you tell me if I'm wrong, and this is what I usually have the home inspector explain. If it's cracking this way, that's an issue. Cracking this way more than this, it's an issue. Otherwise, it's cosmetic and it's just trying to get to those joints that have been put in the concrete. And it's working its way there. That pressure is working its way there, and it's just superficial. That's what I was looking
No,
for.
you nailed it. We spend a lot of time talking about cracks. And I literally joke with buyers that I can spend 3 hours describing different cracks of different ways. But the width makes a difference. The thing I tell my agents and my buyers, the two big things that you need to look for, obviously that's so separated that it's just common sense. Deflection, exactly what you said, up and down, or moisture coming through it, right? If it's not one of those two things.
And the other thing I tell my buyers to calm them down is we can ask the seller to address it, but it's going to make it worse. The only thing they can do is seal it, and that's going to be ugly. So I know you think it's ugly now. Wait till you see it with lipstick. Now it's really obvious. Yeah.
Another one that we see almost on every new construction is the stone veneer.
Yeah, so weak screed. It's not for manufacturing. Then we have to go to the builder, and the builder's like, here's where the manufacturer said that it was installed correctly, because if y'all have not heard the word weak screed, it's the devil. Is it screed or screen?
It's because the license board did a CE class on it last year.
Good,
Now
good.
the home inspector thinks they're anyway, expert on stone veneer. Yeah, the big thing that you'll see often, at least I'll only talk for myself, on stone veneer on new builds, is not terminating all the way to trim. So if we can see mesh backing where mortar was meant to be from your installer, like they set it up to put it there, and it doesn't go all the way to the trim, we as home inspectors, we call it out for the buyer and just say, and then they just come back and hit it more, like no big deal. But the whole whip screed stuff, that stuff gets real complicated real quick, and per manufacturer spec is not something that anybody ever should have to go through and deal with.
And it's just
Like, it
another-
works or it doesn't.
It's just another one of those things you prepare your buyer for. Like, hey, if he calls this out, this is why. We see it all the time. And that, I mean, when you tell them all the time, we see this all the time, it doesn't necessarily make them feel better. It makes them feel like their houses, the stone's not going to fall off the front of their house. Okay, do we have any questions? Anybody have any questions? I know we've like talked at y'all. a
If
lot,
you could
so-
come back up, we have a couple of people asking for you to re-say your name and your contact information.
Hold on, let me get questions first.
Oh,
Any
questions first.
questions? Anything y'all seen, heard of, worried about, how to handle? Everybody good?
I want to touch on polybutylene real quick since that was the topic. Just so you guys know, I have had it replaced in my mother-in-law's house, and we had it replaced in two of Lana's houses that she's purchased. It costs about $4,800 for a 2,800 square foot house to have every polybutylene cut out. The worst part is repairing drywall. It's not that big of a deal.
Right.
But when it fails, they all are going to fail very fast.
My favorite thing to tell my buyers is good news. Everything can be fixed.
Yes.
All right, your turn again.
All right, you said people had questions?
Yeah, they were asking for you to say your name of your company and your contact information again.
Sure. So it's Jeremy Simpson. The company is JB Simpson Home Inspection. And then you can hit me right on my cell phone. It'll go right to me, 919-397-8291. And then the email is jbsinspection@gmail.com. And then the website's www.jbsimpsonhomeinspection. If it's okay with everybody in charge involved, I'll make sure I get that contact information. You guys, so we can put it on
Yes,
Facebook page or
absolutely.
whatever. That way you guys can just click it and access it instead of having to hear me. Yeah.
And this is being recorded and we'll put it on YouTube too.
Oh,
So
perfect.
everybody will be able to
Yeah,
go
I'm
back
okay
to
with
it.
I'm okay with it. Perfect.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This was absolutely cool.
Does anybody have any questions?
And I've got
Conversation?
business cards and